All right, can everyone on the phone hear us?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. It's probably not going to be the best audio quality, so we'll try to speak loud. All right, let's go ahead and get going, everyone. Apologies for being late. As I mentioned, issues getting the state police official out of downtown this morning, so that's what you get for driving up in the morning. But thanks everyone for coming. Hopefully everyone on the phone can hear us. Welcome to our very first final state plan review session for the FirstNet initiative. You guys are kind of our guinea pigs, so we're going to learn a lot from this, and hopefully we'll tweak some more. We've got several more of these going on throughout the state. First, before we get going, let's go ahead and do some introductions. My name is Brian Shepard, I'm the COO of the State Broadband Office, and I'm also the state point of contact for the FirstNet initiative out of OIT. So let's go ahead and just go in the room.
Hi, I'm Brad. I'm the comm director of Dixon County.
I'm Carl Stevens, Garfield County Communications Authority.
I'm Tom Holman. I'm also Garfield County Emergency Communications.
I'm Mark Wentworth with Bell Communications.
Jeff Benson, Jackson County's Fire Chief and County Commissioner.
Nate Wallowitz, Regional Broadband Coordinator for the Northwest Cog, and also Lieutenant with the
Mike Harvey, Fire Chief, Quebec Fire.
Ron Braden, Vail IT.
Edward Germer, Eagle County Sheriff's Office.
John Hildebrand, County Sheriff's Office.
Mike Lockwood, Metro Fire Chief.
Bob Gann, DFW, Center of Excellence.
Paula Creasy, Grand Junction Communications Center Manager, and I also on the FirstNet Colorado.
Jim Hamilton, the IT Director for Grand Junction.
George Roslin with Congressman Dixon's office out of Grand Junction.
John Gray, IT Director, Colorado Fire West. I'm Jimmy, Executive Director for IT for Power.
Patty Schneider, USDA Rural Development for the Utility Services Broadband Coordinator Colorado for RD.
Tracy McElvaney, lead architect with FirstNet out of Boulder, Boulder County.
Jennifer Harder, FirstNet.
Blake Mobley, Westbrook County IT and Broadband Director. Eric Rowling, citizen, resident of Garfield County, member of Season 3, member of Creative Club, just here for
Dave Farrow, OIT, Public Safety Communication Network, Voters, Cyber Eagle. And Marcos Lucero, AT&T FirstNet State Outreach Team, Colorado and Wyoming.
Excellent, great.
I'm Ed Mills, OIT, and Kim can give you a rundown who's online if you want.
Yeah, Kim, you want to give us a rundown of who's online, Kim?
Sure. I have Tracy Murdoch and Doug Harder with FirstNet, Garrett Doyle with AT&T, Ryan Fields with AT&T, Mike Cook with Rio Blanco County, Jeff Bachman, Jeff I believe it's with Grand County, Yvonne Garrett, Emil Olbrook and Randy Looning with Signals Analytics, Kevin Niemand with State Legislature, sorry Kevin, I know you're not with the legislature officially. He works, he's legislative staff. Jennifer Price with AT&T and then Andrew Weiss. Anyone else on the phone who hasn't identified himself? Or herself? Okay.
Great, and Ed's going to pass around a sign-in sheet here, grant purposes for everyone to sign, so please sign in. As I mentioned, so this is the first one of 5 roadshows we're going to be doing. So the purpose of this today really, I think most of you have been around for a while. You've seen us for the last 4 or 5 years talking about this, and one of these days we're going to have this really big decision to make, and all the stuff's going to come down, and we're finally there. We have our final state plan from AT&T and FirstNet, and so what this session is today is to really give you guys a chance to understand what is in the state plan and kind of what are some of the major themes that we have and we're looking at for the decision coming due at the end of this year, and encourage you guys to kind of give us feedback and go into the final state plan portal, because really what we want to do is get feedback. We've designed this process from day one to be a grassroots focused effort. We have our governing body that Paula is on, and Carl is as well. And so that governing body represents all posting disciplines from across the state: police, fire, EMS, law enforcement, sheriffs. It represents rural, it represents urban. We have tribal representation on there. We have public health, we have state, we have county, we have municipal. We have all levels of government and all the disciplines on this governing body. They've been engaged for 4 years now, dedicating their time to this, to really understand this issue. And the reason we did that is when this issue came up, we went to these organizations and said, do you want to integrate this into some other existing mechanism, or do you want to create your own mechanism for this? And unanimously, it was, we want to create something dedicated to this project because it is so important and it is so complicated that we will want the right people to be on here. So that's why we went out. We have our 15-member governing body. As I've mentioned, has been very dedicated. So the purpose of this is to give you guys a chance to give feedback. Now, this feedback process we'll kind of talk through in a minute here, but really is focused on going through this governing body and also through us. Even though we are staff at OIT, the direction for this initiative really comes from that governing body. And so anything that you give us as feedback on this final state plan and the opt-in, opt-out decision, we will funnel to the governing body. We're scheduling a meeting for probably later in October, sometime in November, for the governing body, once we finish all these meetings, to really sit down with the governing body and say, okay, guys, we're gonna lock you in a room, we're gonna talk through this, we're gonna go through all the information we have and figure out what we want to make a recommendation to the governor. I'm pleased to say that the governor is very interested in hearing from this governing body. He understands the consequences of this decision and what we've been doing. And so he is very eager to hear from this governing body. He's very eager to hear the pros and cons of all these different possibilities and really make a thoughtful decision. So we're very pleased to have his engagement on this, and that he really is committed to making an educated decision in this process. So that's kind of what we're here for. We've got, as I mentioned, we're here today. We're doing one of these in South Fork, Pueblo, Fort Morgan, and then we're doing one in the metropolitan area down in Denver, all throughout October. You go to our website, there's the schedule. We're also going to be doing 2 webinars. So for people that can't make it, or if you want to, if you missed something and you want to kind of come again, we'll be doing a couple webinars that, obviously anyone from anywhere can join us, all in the month of October. So we're really kind of cramming this into October because given the time frame, I don't think the governor wants to be dealing with this over the holidays. And so we're kind of trying to work back from that and get all the information possible we can. So where are we at that timeline and process? So the final state plan, what we're going to kind of go through, was delivered on September 19th from FirstNet and AT&T. That did not start the 90-day shot clock though, because we were missing one key piece of information, which was the funding level. The NTIA is responsible for determining what the funding level is if we are to opt out. And the statute basically, it says you have to have that piece of information. And the NTIA didn't provide that by the time FirstNet and AT&T were ready with the final state plan. So they kind of gave us the state plan and said, start looking at this, but the shot clock won't start until you get that piece of information. We got that funding level last Friday, the 28th. So the shot clock started last Saturday, the 29th, which means we have until, and actually, I think that's just, so we have until December 28th to make our final decision. And as I mentioned, I can't speak for the governor, but I don't think he wants to be dealing with this over the holidays. So we're kind of anticipating trying to get a decision, sometime before the holidays. The feedback effort, as I just talked about, ongoing, really going to focus it for this month on the feedback through the governing body so that we can get those folks together in November and really look at this and make a decision. The FirstNet governing body has been listening. They're reviewing this. We have some working sessions with them. We have a working session right after this meeting with AT&T to talk about some coverage issues that we'll go over and some other things. So we've really been ramping up the process with our governing body. And as I mentioned, the final decision no later than December 28th. So what we're going to go over today is the state plan portal. Now, unfortunately, we cannot go over the actual state plan portal because we're not allowed to basically present that portal to anyone that has not signed the terms and conditions. Now, several of you have probably signed the terms and conditions and have viewed that state plan portal, but because some of you have not, basically what we have to do is take information from the public portal. If you go to firstnet.com, so there's a public portal that anyone in the world can see, and then there's a private portal that basically you have to get registered for and credential yourself and sign a terms of use agreement to use that, which has more in-depth information about the final state plan. So what we are going to do is kind of we'll summarize the data that's in that state plan portal to a point where we're not violating the terms of use, and then talk about basically a lot of the stuff that's in the private plan or in the public state plan portal. So after this, if you're very interested in getting more information, I would encourage you to log in for the state plan portal. It's really easy. You just send us an email. We work with FirstNet. They get you a credential, and you go in and sign the terms of use, and then you can go in and see everything yourself. So it's really not that complicated, and it allows you to see much more information that is in the public statement portal. So what is the solution being proposed by FirstNet and AT&T? Essentially, this is a solution that is built on AT&T's existing network. So obviously, as with all the other carriers, AT&T has an extensive network. They have multiple frequency bands, multiple technologies running, and so this effort basically says we're going to take AT&T's network and build upon that to create something for public safety. Some of the key factors of that we talk about. One of the biggest thing is what's called the Evolved Packet Core. Now, the Evolved Packet Core is really kind of the brains of an LTE network. And so what AT&T is proposing is to develop or implement, I should say, a dedicated, secured Evolved Packet Core just for first responders. So even though you are going to hit the same tower as a commercial user, the fact that there's this secured Evolved Packet Core basically means that if you're a first responder, they're going to kind of route first responder traffic to this Evolved Packet Core and nobody else, and all the rest of their traffic on those towers is going to be routed to their nationwide public core. They will implement band class 14 in some areas for capacity, but they also have all kinds of, as I mentioned, all kinds of other spectrum that they'll be utilizing. So essentially, what they're kind of doing is carving off a piece of their network and saying, we're going to dedicate this piece of our network to first responders and make sure that the brains of this is focused just on first responders, and that gives us some security. So obviously that core is going to be much more secure than their nationwide public core. It does some things for roaming. So right now, one of the things I think drives everyone nuts is when you're roaming, if you happen to be roaming and you're on a call, a lot of times that call drops because you're essentially switching from AT&T to maybe Union or Viera. And sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't work well. All that's a function of this Evolved Packet Core. So the fact that there's going to be a single core now that integrates all these roaming partners that AT&T has and will continue to have, in theory, that will smooth out a lot of those roaming issues. So basically, this idea of Evolved Packet Core makes it a much more seamless transition in this. And so again, it's basically saying we're going to build this off AT&T's network and add the things that are necessary, to really make it more robust and secure. They will use regional carriers. I know they already have contracts with Viera. It is already one of their partners. They're working with other, basically Viera, ComNet, and Union are the three primary what we call regional carriers in our state. They are working right now to work with those carriers to implement them. So obviously, where Viera has good coverage, AT&T is already in business with them. So what they're saying is we're not going to go out and overbuild where Viera has coverage. We're just going to integrate them into the network and work with Viera to implement that type of technology in their solution. So they will be partnering with all the carriers. Essentially, if what they have said is if they can't come to an agreement with one of the carriers, they are on the hook to build out. So if there's a certain area as a regional carrier that says, you know what, we don't want to deal with you guys, but AT&T is committing to coverage, then AT&T will have to build out, whether that's new towers or just hang some equipment on existing towers or expand their network. They will commit to doing that. And then the other big thing is new devices and applications. I think most of you guys, have seen, the devices we have, phone devices, some of the ruggedized tablets you're seeing. So basically what AT&T is saying is we're going to have a suite of products now for first responders that are more ruggedized, public safety ready to do that. They'll kind of have a store. And then the application ecosystem, basically think of it as an app store, just like we have, Google Play or the iTunes store. There'll be applications that are basically vetted, through that process. People that want to work with AT&T and FirstNet to develop those applications for first responders. Yeah, that doesn't mean you can't go use another application that you want to use for your business, but it just means to be certified, basically, and they'll test for things such as security, making sure that there's no, malware in some of those applications and so forth. So it's just kind of, again, another way to get you some comfort with what you're using and try to create some ecosystems. Now, obviously, the biggest thing, for applications is still your CAD vendors and so forth, and that has, those folks. Again, you have software and all that kind of stuff. That will still work in the solution. Basically, it's still basically a network pipe to run the application. So that's one of the areas I think where it's still probably the least defined in this whole application element, just because AT&T is not in the business of developing applications. The application people are. So while we create this this ecosystem, there's still going to be some work with the application vendors, and I think AT&T is committed to saying, yeah, we'll work with the Intergraphs and the Tritex and everyone to make sure that those interfaces work and that we kind of have that seamless system. So that's really what the crux of the AT&T FirstNet solution is. There's a lot more detail again in the private portal that we can't talk about, but if you log into there, it does get into like some of the architecture. There's some network diagrams, shows a lot of what I've been talking about, kind of more in depth, if you're interested in looking at that. So one of the elements we want to talk about that's probably been the biggest thing that everyone's interested in is obviously coverage. That's kind of the baseline. If there's no coverage in my area, it doesn't matter who runs the network, I can't use it. Or if it doesn't work well. So what we're going to do is kind of go through some coverage maps. Again, these are coverage maps based on the public state plan portal. The private one has more in-depth ones that kind of step out what coverage is going to look like. So we're going to the maps we have kind of focus on what's there now. So we use the maps basically in the AT&T portal, the public portal, as well as some other publicly available data that we pulled off from the FCC and so forth. We'll talk a little bit about LTE versus non-LTE coverage and kind of what the transition to that's going to be. We went out and did some drive testing with some devices because we wanted to say, okay, let's I think I'm not going to burst anyone's bubble when I say all of the carriers tend to overstate their coverage that they have, especially in the rural areas. So what we wanted to do was kind of say, okay, let's look at the areas, let's identify areas where yep, this coverage is good, it matches up, or you know what, guys, we think you're overstating your coverage a little bit here, and identify some gaps. And that's what we've been working on recently, is really trying to identify some of these gaps. Everyone, AT&T would the first to say, yes, we do not have 100% coverage in your state. We have some very difficult areas of coverage to cover. And so what we've been doing is working with them to identify some areas where, everyone's aware that we don't have coverage right now and that we need coverage, like Glenwood Canyon. We've talked about that it's getting better, but it's not perfect yet. And so, that's one of the areas we've said, okay, let's continue to work on Glenwood Canyon and try to get that done. We have other areas such as Poudre Canyon, between Larimer or between Fort Collins and Walden. What we said, that's going to be a pretty big task, to try to get coverage all throughout Poudre Canyon, in that area. So that might be a lower priority. That's something, yeah, it's important, but just because of the pure cost of doing that might not be in the top of our list. So that's what we're kind of working on right now, is identifying these areas throughout the state that there are gaps, and work with AT&T to say, okay, here's kind of the first batch of areas that we might look to do some additional investment, or some others, and then what are the ones that are really tough to get. So we look at the map here. This is the composite coverage for AT&T. It's a little bit harder. I don't know if we can turn off the front lights here. Is that better? Okay. So when you look at the map, basically this is the composite coverage of AT&T and their partners. And the different shades, so the light blue, and I'm colorblind for this next section here, so if I say something really strange, it's because I'm colorblind. So this light blue here is the Viero elements of that. The darker bluish, purple, whatever, is basically LTE coverage, and these other colors are 2G and 3G coverage. So this is basically, based on the public portal, what AT&T is saying, this will be by the end of 2017, and so this is December 2017, this is what the coverage in your state looks like with the different technologies. And so this is kind of where we started from.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What color is non-coverage?
White.
Is it white?
White, yes.
And isn't this what they call outdoor coverage, which is
Yes.
not representative of what happened if you're driving down the road in a car with your cell phone?
Yes, this is outdoor coverage based on a specific set of engineering parameters that they use to create that coverage. So,
Our experience, my experience is this doesn't represent reality in terms of actual coverage.
yeah, well, yeah, so we'll kind of get to that. And again, there's some more detailed maps on the public portal, or the private portal. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna do that forever. That kind of that take a step down, and you can kind of see some of these transitions where you get into outdoor versus in-vehicle versus indoor. So yes. And so this is a composite of the publicly available FCC coverage. So basically every year, all the carriers have to submit to the FCC where you have coverage. And so what we did is we went to the FCC. Now this is as of December 2016, and what the coverage looks like. So you can see they're pretty similar. So basically, these two look very similar to what they have for all technologies out there. So what we did is the State Patrol uses both Verizon and AT&T, basically depending on what the state does. It says who's ever the best carrier in your area, you can use that to the patrol for each troop. So different troops use different carriers. And in their modems on their vehicles, we have some software that can basically pull the data about coverage. And so what we did is we had them turn that on, and we went back. Basically, this is all starting in January of this year, and we said, okay, let's look at data and pull your coverage. And there's several different colors in here, but the ones that are most, you can kind of see mostly, are this yellowish color and then the purplish color. So basically, yellow is good, means yep, there's good signal there. That's where they had good signal. The purplish is not good. Basically, where there was either very minimal coverage or no coverage. Again, based on the data from the modems. And so this is a trunk-mounted vehicle with your antenna either on the top or on the back with not high power, but with a trunk-mounted modem. So you can kind of see, it seems to make sense. Areas that I think everyone knows are kind of problematic. You're going over here for Gunnison. Here's pass over to Montrose. I think everyone knows that's a difficult spot. There's Monarch Pass. We've got Wolf Creek Pass down here. Everyone knows that's a difficult spot. Park County, everyone, I think, everyone has problems there. So this basically kind of represents where we see good coverage and where we see not good coverage. So then what we did is we overlaid that with the proposed end of year coverage to say, okay, where do we seem to be in concert, with what they say is coverage at the end of this year, and where are we not really seeing that same thing? So you can kind of see all the areas, all definitely up and down the main corridors, main population centers. We're seeing, things where we say, yep, you guys say there's good coverage, and we say there's good coverage. Now, there are some areas where we're saying, and we see the areas, most of this is these areas where it's different technology. So it's not necessarily LTE. It might be 2G or 3G. So what we're seeing in a lot of these areas is, again, to Bob's point, when you look at the public-private portal, there's some, you can tweak some things and see where, as you go down, these are what AT&T would call kind of the fringe areas. So the areas where we're seeing problems, they're saying, yes, those are kind of fringe areas that we're working on upgrading to LTE. Now, some of these might be in those cases where you are with a roaming partner, and you're kind of going back and forth. That's the other thing you have is if you're trying to go back and forth between the two networks, you might not see good coverage. So this is kind of, we overlaid that to say, okay, what does this look like?
Hey, Brian?
Yes.
I couldn't tell from the map, but do you recall off the top of your head what the difference between good and not good coverage was?
I can pull it here. Let me pull it up from everything.
That's okay. I'm sure somebody will ask you.
Yep, I've got that right here. I guess I failed to mention, so obviously the folks from AT&T and FirstNet are back here. So as we're going along in our conversation, I shoot questions as we go. And if you have questions for AT&T or FirstNet, they are obviously here. So, 1 second, let me pull it. Here we go. Okay, so for CSP, because this software measured, sorry, Trish, let me get there. It's a good question. It's something we've worked. Okay, so for this application, basically this measured RSRQ, and what the status was. If the RSRQ is greater than -10 is excellent. Is kind of the grade. So basically, greater than -10 is excellent, and these are kind of the only colors you can see. Poor is less than -20. RSRQ is poor. And then basically the purple is no cell coverage at all. So we kind of aggregated a little bit, to the colors. So basically anything less than -20 is going to show up as this purplish color. Yeah, so it's kind of like either absolutely no coverage to very not usable coverage basically.
And green would be better than -20 or negative better than
yeah. Well, the green is basically anywhere from -20 to and better. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. So in addition to that, what we did is we did some in-vehicle coverage testing. And we wanted to do both because we figured they're both use cases. Obviously, most first responders, especially in rural areas, they do have the modems with the antennas, but you also have your cell phone in your vehicle. You're driving down the road, and we need to be able to utilize that. So we have some devices that we put, mostly the Sonom devices, and we put similar software, a little bit different, and I'll tell you what that one was, Tracy. And basically drove around the state. And we did this just as we were going out and about in our outreach efforts. a couple of days, we did do some specific drive testing in areas where we, people had said, hey, I want to check out the coverage here. And so this one provides a little bit more. So basically, let me make sure I'm saying this one right. So basically, this, for the handheld, this one measures, I believe, hold on a sec. Randy, the sign-off. So this one mentions, this is sign-off. And so basically, the yellowish is excellent, so that is greater than 20. The green is fair, 0 to 12. And then the purplish, again, is either poor or no service, so less than 0. And so what we did is we drove around and compiled in the population areas, the major highways, the towns, we see green and yellow, which is good. And when we start to get into some of the rural areas, we're starting to see some not good areas. Obviously this is kind of the deep into Pitkin County. This is up in the Basalt area, up by Ruda Reservoir. Again, this is West Cliff. So you can see the 2 roads in and out of Highway 69 and 96 and out of West Cliff. This is 135 up to Crescent Buttes. We've got Highway 65 up over the Grand Mesa. So again, these are areas we know are difficult. Up in Garfield County, the roads up to Meeker and Craig. Some of these areas up here, again, Park County, what we see. So this is kind of what we did is we said, okay, let's look at that. So we then combined that with our in-vehicle. So again, okay, where are we in sync with, what we look at coverage and what we not look at coverage, and where do we say, hey, there's some issues here. So again, as we see the same, again, kind of the same issues. There are some places where, they're claiming that there's good coverage, and we're saying no, it's really not. Some key areas that we look at, and again, we'll get to kind of some of those gaps. So this is what we really did with our drive testing. Now what we did is as we looked through things, what we did is we pulled out and we said, let's look at just the LTE coverage, focusing on that. And so this is just the LTE coverage. And when you see, this starts to kind of look more like what we're seeing, especially with the end vehicle, that where there's LTE, we're matching up. So what they're saying is good coverage, we're saying, yep, there is good coverage there. In the areas where there's not LTE, that's where we're starting to kind of say, we're starting to get a little bit, out of whack here with areas. And basically this falls in line. What AT&T has said is that basically they are working on upgrading their entire network to LTE. And as part of this process, for the FirstNet process, what they will be doing is working with their partners to upgrade their networks to LTE. So basically what we're saying is LTE is definitely the more stable, the better technology. So that's what we want to do. And when we look at that. So it's kind of, what we're looking at is as they progress and move towards LTE, all the performance should get better. And the coverage should get better throughout the state as we go down the path. And so this is the zoomed in coverage on kind of the northwest area, this area up here. So we've got Gunnison area, Pitkin, Eagle County, Garfield County. So this is kind of this northwest corner of the state. And again, you can see, I don't think I'm going to surprise anyone, but some of the difficult areas, again, Gunnison area, Rio Blanco, Moffett area, up towards Walden and Steamboat, Bishop Rivers Pass. We've got Highway 9 up through there. Are some areas. Again, down here when we look into Park County, again, so those are kind of some of the areas where we said, here's the problems we're having.
And that map is the CSP truck mounted.
This is the CSP truck mounted modem, and then this is in-vehicle. So the same thing with in-vehicle.
Are these voice packets or data?
This is basically just signal. So we didn't actually do any kind of load testing. This was just, in the case of the modems, they basically, the software just every second pings and says, okay, what's my signal strength? What was my performance? And the same thing with the devices. It's just software that sits on there and continuously pings and says, what is the performance I'm getting right now from that?
Is it looking only at LTE, or is it looking at all types? Like, so if it's pinging at a 2G.
So when they do these drive tests, there's multiple fingers to the receivers in the devices.
Okay.
Each finger, when the device isn't transmitting receiving data, is going to be looking for other carriers. So you're basically seeing the receive packets from one finger of the receiver in the device or the LTE signal. So the data on the map is only the LTE better quality. So the actual end user experience would be a little bit better than this, but this is accurate based on what the device sees when it's running.
Yeah, and
LTE. That's right. Yeah, but they don't map only LTE.
Yep.
So you'll see the difference between the blue and the colors. The blue is modeled based on clutter data that they purchased, and the actual data is, actual measurements. And I think the actual data is good because it's very, very consistent with the Nielsen drive test data and the actual results.
And yellow is
good.
right, yellow, well, purple is bad,
Purple's bad,
green is,
okay, yellow's good. So yellow's excellent, green is fair, and purple's bad, basically, is what we're looking at.
and one clarification, if you back up there, just a lot of the roads there, actual roads are drawn in green. Be careful, if the green dots.
Yes,
not
that's
green
the
roads.
thing, so
You see
basically,
the road
this,
going up to Redstone is all green and it's all zero.
yeah, so roads like this, we didn't have any data on there, we only had limited time, so, yeah, if you see a skinny little green line here, that's just the road. What we're talking about is all these dots here, that's,
Well, interpret green roads
Yes.
is good coverage.
And the green roads are areas where wasn't drive test data overlaid.
yeah, we just, we had pretty limited time to do this, we only had a handful of us doing this, so, we drove as much as we could and got out, Carl did some driving, we headed out, Sheriff Day out in Union County did some drive testing, so, Bobby did some drive testing, so yeah, we had a limited set of folks, so it would have been great to be able to drive the entire state, but, yeah.
The display function in those tools is terrible. They're very good at taking data, not very good at showing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking all those green lines, so all those green lines that are roads that don't have dots on them have not been driven.
Correct, yeah, so basically going up through here, at a Eagle, so this is basically up, this is, Highway 131. Yeah, you can see we did a little bit of testing, up through there, but then all the way up, all the way up into, Steamboat, we didn't test, yeah, we didn't have a chance to do that.
And I would say majority of that is not covered.
Yeah.
Most of that is not coverage area.
Yep.
Up in that northwest corner.
If it's not documented, it's not having coverage, it's going to be able to get one day.
So we'll get to this. This is basically when you look at the 2016 FCC coverage, LTE coverage data. This is kind of what we see, and again, so what we're seeing is areas where there's strong LTE, we're seeing good coverage. Areas where there's not strong LTE, we're not seeing good coverage. Yep, same thing. So when you look at, so this is basically comparing what, again, with LTE, what you look at the population area. So if you look at the public portal, by the end of the year, what AT&T is saying, the area of Colorado will be 74% coverage. The FCC form, based on at the end of 2016, is 48%. So basically, and what AT&T has said is they have been focusing this year on increasing all of their sites to LTE and building that up. So that's what this is. And then you can see the population, not a whole lot of population difference, because most of the population is covered right now. And then the area, and then this is just for the Northwest region, what you're seeing there.
So Brian, I was taking a look at that FCC data this morning to kind of validate some of the area coverage. And so that FCC data was submitted in June, and that's submitted voluntarily by the operators themselves. So
Well,
the FCC what their coverage is.
Yeah, this is from end of year 2016. So unfortunately, we don't have.
Yeah, that's June of 2016. And one thing I noticed though was AT&T has the 3 roaming partners listed in the state plan, but only Union data was in that, and that may be the Delta area.
Yeah.
That was showing up.
Yes. Again, because we can't show the totality of the private portal, we were just trying to see what.
Say, Brian, if I can just comment on the FCC data, this was what was in the ground as of December 31st, 2016. So it's the latest FCC release, and it was filed by AT&T and other operators, obviously in the first quarter of the probably of this year, or maybe mid-year. But it was reflective of the network at the end of 2016.
Well, so what you're saying, so you have so the Form 477 is filed twice a year.
Yeah.
We as public don't get access for like a year lag time. So you might be able to see the June of 17. All we can see is the December of 16.
I'm saying the ones that are on the FCC website today are June of 16.
Actually, they just updated it recently, yeah. So because we had those, Randy, I think it was within the last few weeks.
Okay.
They posted.
I don't think the date is important. I think it's the lack of those two roaming partners.
Yeah.
It's why the area.
Yep. Okay.
And what they actually do is they release some parts of it mid-year, but this data set has a little bit of a lag. So we refreshed this a couple weeks ago.
Okay. So this map is a little bit harder to see. We didn't have a chance to really expand this one, but so what we did is we sat down and we went through all this data that we created for this data. We said, okay, where are the gaps? Where do we think the coverage gaps are? And you can see basically this, I think this is orange, whatever the color this is here. You can see some of these gaps that we've overlaid kind of just the core LTE coverage. And so what you can see is we've got to be able to identify where these gaps are. And so what we did is we literally we sat down with all this data, we put it up on the screen and went through and basically said, okay, where are the gaps that we see? And we sat down with AT&T. So this you can kind of see where the gaps are. Obviously, most of our gaps are in the western slope. On the eastern plains, one, the geography is a lot easier on the eastern plains, and then two, Vero does a very good job, and having them as a partner, Vero does a very good job out there providing coverage. So that's why you see you don't see a whole lot of gaps on the eastern plains, just because of the combination of AT&T's core network and then Vero does pretty well, whereas in the western slope, lots more challenges, with getting coverage. So that's most of the gaps we see are on the western slope. So what we did is, again, we went through, and this is just kind of, the summary of where the gaps are. You can just see here, we just went down through, Highway 125, Walden to Grandview, Highway 13, Rifle to Craig, and just went down and listed all of these gaps. Move this little pitch here.
So you focused on state and U.S. highways, not county roads.
Yes, for this initial cut, for the initial cut, we did focus basically. That was is what we looked at is where are, obviously the population centers are fairly well covered. So we said, where are people going? Carl had when Carl was meeting with him, he said, look, we've seen a huge increase in traffic from Rifle up to Beaker, and the number of head-on collisions is increased dramatically. Just the traffic. So that's what we kind of focused this first cut on. All right, where are we seeing big increases in traffic flow and people, on a transitive basis, for weekend or seasonal, that kind of thing.
But we also do like Rifle Gap and stuff that is state highway, but we also do like RV gaps on county roads. Yeah, most of their data is based on state highways.
Yeah, again, just time and resources. We didn't have the chance to drill down and identify all the specific county roads, but we have said. This whole time we have said that in the rural areas, county roads are critical. That's most of them. When you talk county sheriffs and fire, those county roads are pretty critical mechanisms to get around. So this is our
fire department didn't have state or federal highway. Didn't exist.
So this is kind of what we've done with the coverage. And so what we've done is we actually sat down with AT&T and their engineers and went through this list about 2 weeks ago. And so on a lot of these, they have said, yep, we already know this is a problem and we already have plans to expand. So for example, Highway 103, Evergreen to Idaho Springs. They said, yep, that's a problem and we already have it in the pipeline to look at that and say, yes, that is an area that we need to focus on. I mentioned Crested View, so that we talked about Highway 135. They said, yep. We know 135 is a place where we need at least one more tower, and we want to focus on that. So we kind of, what AT&T did was look at this and say, okay, here's the areas where we know there's an issue here, and it's in the pipeline to look at and say, we got to cover this area. Then the next thing, what they said was, okay, what's your priority next? And, go back to the Scooter Canyon one. Is that a priority? Well, if that's your top priority, that's probably going to take all the money we have. So you guys look at that. And that's what we're actually meeting with our governing body this afternoon, and we're going to talk about it as well, is to kind of go through this list and say, okay, guys, how do we want to prioritize this? And AT&T and FirstNet wanted us as the state to prioritize that. And I said, that puts me in a really difficult position because I am now, if you tell me, here's this list, I think we had like 47 or something like that, segments of highway. And the problem is, each segment, one of these segments might take 1 tower and it's done, but one of these segments might take 10 towers, before you could really, fully get that. And I said, what you're doing is you're asking me to prioritize one county over another county. You're asking me to prioritize Route County over Park County. And that's not my, I don't have that ability to tell you which county is different. So what we're trying to do is look at and kind of group these things into areas of emphasis that we'll focus on moving forward with the state. So that is kind of the rundown of coverage of what is in the state plan. Questions? A lot of information.
I don't know if it's questions or comments. I think it's important for people to realize that, yeah, you go drive test the roads, but any coverage out from those roads is based on a model. And those models have limitations, particularly in rough terrain. So it's a pretty picture that shows highway, whatever, and this area around it. In reality, if you're getting off that highway very far, you're probably going to be in no coverage or living. That's not a complaint or a criticism. It's just something I want people to understand. I was on a call the other day, a week, 2 weeks ago, helping the NTSB in an area that shows coverage, and we had net coverage for 10 miles. Probably because the model can't deal with the terrain. It's a really tough thing. By the way, I got a little experience in this. I got a PhD in electrical. So I've done this stuff in the past. Like I said, it's not a criticism. I just want people to realize that when you see those big blue areas, if you were to zoom in detail, you're going to find lots of little holes. You know, not a civilian walking down the road trying to make a phone call, they find a good spot, they talk. Or an emergency response is requiring that communication as their base communication, that becomes a problem. So you just need to stack that into calculation.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's one of the things we talked about is, if the state does choose to opt in, they said, what's kind of the role of our staff, our office, as the state moving forward. And that's one of the things I really see us doing. And a great example of that, I'll use, this up the Crescent Butte and also this area of Pickett County. And I know this very well. It's where I grew up hunting and fishing and camping. This road up here, to your point, Bob, that's probably, it's pretty quick. You lose coverage, but then you pick it up pretty quick. As the DNT said, it's probably 1 tower. They get one tower in there, kind of blast out, and we should be good to go. That should be fine. This area up here, this is basically from the salt up to Root Reservoir and around these areas. And to your point, if you drill in, and again, you can do this on the public-private portal, you can really drill in on this. You see where, it shows at this level it's covered, but when you drill in, this whole road is right on the fringe, and the whole road isn't covered. And when you look at it, the coverage it comes down from either edge here, but it doesn't condense there. So this is a big overview, and again, why I would encourage you to go look at the private portal, because you can see a lot more information on there. But that, as we move forward, again, if the state were to opt in, that's what we see us doing, is being kind of that conduit from all of you guys, rather than, 64 different voices from 64 different counties hammering AT&T and FirstNet, is to work through us to say, okay, here's where the prioritization, money's not infinite, there's a finite amount of money for this, and so we're continuing to work with them on identifying these critical areas of coverage and moving forward with that.
Great point. That's not an AT&T problem, that's a radio problem.
Yeah.
It really comes down to what's the towers, how tall are they, how short are they, what band, high frequency, penetrate further, lower frequency. That's a tough thing to get that amount of detail into any map. That's why all the carriers overestimate coverage on their commercial sites, and I think it's a real way for an agency to get to what their experience is going to be before they go back to the I really got to know, what the information is.
Well, I think Bob's in a unique situation because I don't know if you know his role. I mean, his group basically comes up with new technology, new ideas to fight fires. So I think there's a partnership with you, FirstNet and his group and AT&T. I mean, there's a lot you can do nationwide.
Yeah. And Brian, quickly, I want to just stand up some Tracy just commented on it, that there was a comment made earlier, and I'm sorry, I forget your name, but that there was a number of areas that, because of resource and capability, sometimes you didn't have the ability to attack. Know that we at AT&T have a great willingness to work with the independent agencies, departments, municipalities help you evaluate what coverage is in your territory, work with you to ensure that we're addressing your specific, unique operational requirements and objectives. So we're here as a resource, and we're available for you to individually assess what it means.
Yeah, and again, moving forward, that's one of the things we could do with our staff is if we said, look, we want to work with AT&T and FirstNet to get to that level of detail on these maps, to spend the resources to do that, and be able to sit down with agencies, and go out and say, okay, guys, here truly is what the coverage looks like, and be able to pinpoint as we move forward. What, especially in our state, what we're gonna do is, continue to hit the low-hanging fruit, and very soon we're going to get to the things that are very important, as we've seen the influx. I just remember in the article what they say, 5 people have died on Capitol Mountain, this year. It's like, okay, we got to figure something out. But Capitol Mountain is really difficult to cover. We're going to start getting down to these areas where it's like, oh, that's really difficult to cover. Well, yeah, but we just had 5 people die up there. So how do we do that? And so that again, if we opt in, that's where I see it's kind of getting to. It's figuring out those difficult solutions and identifying specific areas and potential solutions for those difficult to reach areas. Sarah? Yeah.
So when you talk about those difficult solutions, what is it like with planning the sites for towers? At the federal level, is that gonna be easier to site a communication tower with a federal agency because of the federal plan?
There is a directive that all the federal landowning agencies need to make it basically, it's part of this and the rural broadband expansion effort, that both President Obama and President Trump have basically said to all the federal landowning agencies, you need to make this easier. That's as far as it went. What easier means, we're not quite sure. But no, that's a great point. And I think something, again, if we were to opt in, that we would be able to sit down and the voices of the state, FirstNet, AT&T, and the local jurisdictions, if we all sit down with our forest service managers, or, we call in the USDA or the Forest Service to come in, we might be able to hammer something out and move that forward. Yeah.
So Aaron and I, we both built multiple sites in these very remote and hard to build areas. That has always been in the Forest Service plan as public safety can trump anything. That does not mean that it's ever gone anywhere in some of these remote areas. I think when looking at your projections of these passes and places that don't have coverage, there's some of them you will not get a tower within 30 miles of that location, and you won't get power regardless ever in those locations.
And I think
there's a roadless area and a lot of that stuff. And we've been down that road, and it's already written in the Forest Service plan that they have and that public safety can override. And in a couple cases, we've been able to push pretty hard to make it happen. But in other cases, we're up against the wall. That and has already been written in way before this ever started. That plan was written in when the Forest Service was done. They allowed public safety to much strong against their land.
So I think
in some cases we've been successful. In other cases, we haven't.
Yeah, I think the key thing is people need to be realistic about that. We talk about River Canyon. I was fire chief next to River Canyon for 22 years. And as long as I was a firefighter for 30, as long as I was there, we talked about not having communications with River Canyon and how we were going to fix it. And after 12 years, they finally put a tower up for one LMR site this year. And that covers maybe 10% of River Canyon. So it's a really hard problem. So again, not a criticism. It's to make sure people really understand that with all the goodwill in the world, putting a tower up in these places, you're going to run into local problems. You're going to run into private ownership problems. You're going to run into city, city wanting not to have the impact of a tower on a hill. It's just going to be really hard. And so let's make sure we understand.
Yeah, and again, that in an optimal scenario, that's where maybe it is we create a map and we identify those areas where we say, guys, I tell you, but we're likely never to get coverage in these areas. But at least we know.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about it later. Part of the solution is a deployable solution. So what AT&T has stated is there will be 72 deployables throughout the country dedicated to FirstNet. and basically strategically placed to have as good response time as possible. So if we know, we identify those areas where we say we will never get coverage. That's not going to help when we've got an hour to get up there. But at least we know, and whether it's festivals or long-term things, we will at least know, okay, here's the areas where we're going to need to get these deployables to. What's the best way to get those deployables there? So maybe it is we map out plans to get deployables there as fast as possible. So yeah, so that's again moving forward, being realistic about what is possible, what's not possible.
And what I would suggest is maybe a first step thing to do this, something we're doing right now for unrelated topics. There are databases, maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but like InFirst, for instance, has response capabilities, response information throughout the nation. That data includes when was the page, when was the arrival, and when was it done. And you can do a sort that says, okay, 90% of the calls are over in an hour and a half. Deployable is not something that's going to work in that. Deployable is a 14-hour. So let's just make sure we understand that if you have a call that's 2 or 3 hours long, if it's an area where it's going to require a deployable, don't count on it. It's not going to happen. If there happens to be one in the town next to you, maybe.
One of the things too, I think we didn't do a great job of in the state plan of communicating to AT&T's customer on maintaining the core of this program. They're not cheap, but in those areas where you really need to deploy them, you use there all the time, it's high use. They create playbooks and they can work with your equipment, they can provide all the equipment, but they have deployables that run 3 weeks on 196 gallon tank of diesel. They have satellite backhaul. As far as you need, that's in your facility, plugged into your network, you push upgrades and maintain it remotely, and you can hook up to that. That's what you need.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we push that a lot with AT&T and FirstNet in terms of, if the state or local agency wants to spend those resources, you're right, the details aren't, there's not very many details in the state plan, so we still don't know what that looks like in terms of how that works. But basically what AT&T has said is we'll talk with you about that. So that is an option, and more information on that would be very helpful.
If you look up the AT&T Vanguard program on some of the commercial sites, you can get some information because we're basically taking advantage of that program. The sales guys have it too.
Ryan, what are the real values of this? Back into this, explain what I'm trying to get to. But in our funding, even for our broadband program, you have to show that you have 15% of the homes and businesses you're providing to, the providers are not served. And the problem with the RMAP is that it's general. So while you know you don't have service, but golly, the math says you do.
That's right.
So we're all in a catch-22 here. I guess what I'm backing up to is, because so those non-coverage areas are kind of golden actually. So we need them, and we need those. So I'm wondering is if we could use these doing and creating, and have the counties and the communities drill down and really find what I consider the sweet spot of no coverage, because then we can come in with funding. If 30% of people truly have no coverage, then we can cover the area. With our maps, which are a mess. So I'm wondering if this might not be an opportunity to drill down deeper with the communities, let them report back and get some really.
Yes, so that dovetails, I think most everyone knows our broadband program, and that's one of the areas we do broadband mapping for general broadband availability. I've been working with the PUC recently on trying to identify some things, and once they saw what we're doing here, they had the same thing, like, wow, this if we could combine this. And so we actually are talking about how could we work. We also have the state, it's not 100%, but we've got a very good start at a statewide address data set. So we can tell you almost every address in the entire state. There's about 6 counties or so, mostly on the Eastern Plains. We don't have the data, and they haven't shared that with us. But yeah, so we can actually work to get that. And that's what we're looking at, is even on the broadband side, can we get down to, in our broadband networking team, they're using the public land survey system, which breaks things down into a 40-acre square grid. And so we're saying, can we get down to literally a 40-acre grid and to be able to identify by a 40-acre grid homes that are served and unserved. And obviously, if, we could do the same thing with this. So absolutely, it is something we're talking about. You're working with the PUC to say, how can we use all this data we've got to drill down some of these maps? And again, especially as, as money becomes more finite and, we have to pick certain areas, being able to strategically target areas. And whether that is, there's the FCC has a mobility fund for wireless for road, for basically rural areas, very hard to reach areas. So that's something we want to combine with and to get solve this problem. So yeah, so I've always said the solution to this is not going to be one silver bullet. It is going to be a group of different funding levels and funding mechanisms to solve the overall problem that we have.
Even if the mapping portion becomes the piece that shows those gaps and can demonstrate to us, because when I've worked with our federal office and they would love someone to appeal to broadband. They would love states to come back and say, that broadband map is wrong, and here's the right data.
We've done that.
Have they fixed it?
Well, it's not the FCC, yes.
Did they? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I said the FCC has not.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay, so any other questions on coverage before we go into pricing? Okay. So a couple caveats of pricing. Again, we're going to talk very abstract. Basically, AT&T has worked with NASPO. NASPO is the National Association of State Procurement Officials. Used to be WISCA. Basically, it's a government procurement, shared procurement contract that most, there's 2 or 3 big ones across the country. That's one most people in the West use to purchase things. So basically, AT&T has worked with NASPO to get this FirstNet offering as part of the NASPO contract. So this is the most you would pay. What AT&T has said is they want to negotiate with each agency individually. So they want to come out and negotiate with your agency on what the ultimate price of your service is going to be based on what you want. Are you a smartphone heavy person, or do you just have a bunch of modems you want to do? So they want to customize it. So when we talk pricing, we kind of have to talk very big and abstract terms. So we're still not able to tell you this is what it's going to be per line, per device, per month. So we kind of have to go just based on that. The one thing we do want to talk about, and our signals did a really good job of analyzing this. So in moving forward, what AT&T wants to do with this FirstNet offering is really focus on 2 types of offerings: a pool mechanism and an unlimited pricing. So pool mechanism is where you can essentially buy a bunch of data, and you can have smartphones or tablets or modems. You're basically saying here's a certain set of data we're going to use, and pull across a whole bunch of devices. And if you don't go over it, that's great. If you do go over that, then you're going to pay basically per meg over that. Unlimited is obviously unlimited. You can use whatever you want, and you buy that device, you could use it whatever you want. And so when you look at this, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, we'll send this out, and I'll get the little tool that we're creating. Basically, you can look at it and basically break it down and say, okay, what is the cost per gig or per meg I'm looking at? And what we're hoping to do is provide you a mechanism to say, look at what is your current, what are you currently using right now? You should be able to go to your bills, whether your AT&T or Verizon or Vero or Union, and look at what your devices are using. Without an AdCom, I do that. I had the 10 people that went over every single month, and that's what we told them. We had the 10 people that didn't use any debate, so we were able to do that. So what we want to do is to have you kind of start to think through that, because it is, it might be a little bit different than you're used to doing now. So when you look at it, as it says here, you can purchase, a terabyte of data, or you can put 2 gigs or 50 gigs or 500 gigs, and spread that across your agency. So really kind of start thinking about it. Does your agency use body cam or not? If so, are they streaming, or do you just load them down and then bring them back and upload them over Wi-Fi? What type of other communications do you have? Do you use a lot of mapping? What kind of data does your CAD use? Most CAD systems pretty minimal data usage, but some are getting more and more. Do you send a lot of pictures back and forth? So what this tool is going to do is really have you look at this and say, what is it that you need to do? When in the contract they have with their national like tethering, what they basically say is there's going to be an additional charge for tethering, because if you have a smartphone and you can tether it, obviously you could use a lot more data. You know, so that there's basically, it's really kind of getting down into looking at what is your overall utilization of data. And then this is not different than kind of what we see the industry going to as a whole. You know, broadband access is becoming somewhat of a commodity, so to speak. You know, and you're starting to look at it. What is the price of that product? What is that unit price per gigabyte used? And so that's what the pricing is going to be. Again, there are unlimited plans. They are more expensive, you know, because you can't do it. So again, you need to think that through. So your pricing might look at, I might have a pool, but I might have a few devices limited. You know, I don't know. Marcus?
Yeah, so Brian, I wanted to comment that we very intentionally developed this pricing to be at parity or below what you're spending today in a very feature-rich environment. And just like my offer to help you evaluate your individual community's coverage requirements, we are available at the same cost perspective to make ourselves available to do a very deep dive analysis of what your cost comparables will be, so you have a strong and understanding of what the true cost of ownership will be for you moving forward.
Hey, Brian,
Yeah.
I think, I know Kim sent some questions over AT&T and some of our folks on pricing, and I think it might help clarify a little bit in like these 3 slides here.
Yeah.
So we'll provide that back offline, but on this slide in particular, I didn't need to speak to this one because I think there's a misunderstanding of the word approved applications in the rate plan that it sort of led to this slide, and it's actually landed in a place that's not accurate. But approved business application means use of the device. Also, if it's used for business purposes, it can be on an unlimited plan. So there's no restriction on the types of applications you can download and install. There's no restriction on use. I mean, if you have a business device on an unlimited plan, if you have Netflix and you watch movies, that's okay.
Okay.
So I think the message here is that it's very restrictive if you go on an unlimited plan. That's not actually the case.
Okay.
Limiting applications and stuff like that. And AT&T is going to provide an MDM service for agencies that want to do that. Agencies can bring their own service if they want to do that. But by and large, if you're a first responder and you have a business use for the device, you can be on. So the only devices that are restricted are streaming devices. So if you have a traffic cam that's LTE enabled and you want that to stream, it won't be able to stream on the plan. It'll have to be on the plan. So I think that business application word that led people down a different path.
Okay.
It's not accidental.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. We'll as I mentioned, this is our first one from the guinea pig, so we'll do that. And what Tracy's talking about is as we've gone through the final state plan, you know, we've been sending questions and clarifications back to AT&T and FirstNet and getting it. So again, you guys are the guinea pigs.
And rate plan would look at that.
Yeah. Yep.
I would say take this slide out, start over. So I wouldn't, in the room right now, I wouldn't go over this. Let's get some more accurate information to you. We have the right information going forward.
Yeah, but we'll
yeah, this talks about the pool. You know, what happens in a pool device, and again, you know, basically, depending on what the pool is looking at, you know, there's different pricing. If it's a pool, you know, for a bunch of trunk mounted modems versus pooled for a bunch of smartphones, obviously much different application and utilization of data and potential. And then again, you know, I think you know, the elephant in the room has been and will continue to be, you know, body cams and video streaming. You know, that was, you know, when we first built the AdCom network, the PSCR folks, actually, Emil, who's helping us out, and that was when he was the PSCR, they did an analysis, and you know, when they came in and they analyzed the network we built, it showed how video will just, even the dedicated network we built, you know, 20 megahertz spectrum, completely dedicated, no one else using it. The video would bring that network to its knees like that if we didn't manage it correctly. And so, you know, it's not as big of an issue, I think, in the rural areas, but when we're looking at the suburban and the urban, you know, if Sydney County of Denver comes to AT&T and says, we want to stream every single cop and firefighter on duty 24 hours a day, that is going to be, I don't even know if that's possible. So, you know, think through that this idea of streaming video, and Tracy mentioned, you know, we talked about traffic cams and so forth, you know, it's kind of the flip side, because, you know, most traffic cams in metropolitan areas are on fiber. You know, we run fiber, so we don't have to worry about it. Well, out here, there's not as much fiber out here. So you guys might actually have applications where we say, you know what, we need 10 or 15 traffic cams that we want to stream, and this would allow us to do that. But the problem is that's going to take up a huge amount of data. So this idea of video streaming, both in the unlimited and the pooled, is really going to be complicated. in anything. If we opt in, we opt out, whether you go to AT&T, whether you go to Verizon, it doesn't matter. This is something that's really going to be complicated moving forward, and we really got to move forward that carefully.
What we're really trying to do is say, we're not trying to say, no, you can't. We're trying to say, let's plan for it, let's get it right.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a cost. There's a cost. If you want to stream every single one of your traffic cams over LTE 24 hours a day, you can do it, but there's a cost, and just, we need to be able to provide you that cost so you can say, is that in our business case,
So can you clarify what primary and extended primary use is?
Thanks. So basically, the big differentiator, so to recap, there's two definitions of public safety user at the federal level. One is very tight. Basically, if you're not a first in, so if you're not a cop, firefighter, or a paramedic, you're not considered a first responder. The other one is very broad. Basically says if you're a first in or if you're anyone else that helps a first in, you're a first responder. So FirstNet never really said this is the definition we're going with. What they allowed is they allowed AT&T to kind of come up with their definition. And so basically, under the plan, what AT&T is saying is primary users, which is the more restrictive. It is firefighters, police, and EMS. They've also expanded it to 911 and emergency management. So basically, if you're emergency management, 911, law enforcement, fire, or EMS, you're a primary user. So that means all of these bells with the prioritization, the preemption, you get that as part of your base plan. So whatever you buy, you get that. It's kind of free. So that comes with it. Extended primary users are transportation, public works, other people, kind of, again, the support, the help the first in. Now, they can get the prioritization preemption, but you have to pay $7.50 a line to get that. Now, that's if you want it all the time. There is a feature, what's called the uplift feature. So basically, if you're a jurisdiction and you say, you know what, only my more restrictive, those 5 categories need that prioritization and preemption all the time, but you have a big event and a big accident, the road closes, so I got to get transportation public works there. There's the ability to what's called uplift. So you can uplift any user to that primary status for 24 hours. So if you have a bad accident, you go in, you say, I uplift my entire jurisdiction. If they uplift 24 hours, everyone gets that prioritization and preemption for that 24 hours. If you need to do it again, you can continue to do that. But on a day-to-day basis, they will not have, the secondary will not have the prioritization preemption. If you pay that $7.50 per user, they get that prioritization preemption all the time. So they're basically treated the same way that the primary first responders are treated in that. So that's basically what that primary versus extended is. So again, it's a business case that you as a jurisdiction have to ask yourself, do these people really need the prioritization preemption all the time? Maybe it's certain ones. Maybe you say public works, yes, transportation, no. But you have that choice to do that. But again, that uplift allows anyone. So if you say I put my whole jurisdiction on FirstNet, first in, first responders have the prioritization. Everyone else, if you have a bad incident, then you can uplift everyone to that given time.
There's a great resource available. If you Google AT&T Service Guide and hit Service Guide Library, you can scroll down to Public Safety Service Guide. AT&T actually has published the FirstNet Service Guide, and the definition and the codes that they use to understand where agencies fall is in there. So if that policy is ever updated or it gets broader for extended primary to primary, the most recent information is always in that service guide. So I'd recommend everybody go and really find that. It's pretty good research.
Can you go up a slide for a second where you're talking about devices, the bottom half of that?
On this one?
No, on the restrictions on the device there.
That's the one we were talking about.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about.
I guess now everyone just carries 2 phones.
Yeah, that was what Tracy said. There's miscommunication in terms of what's the information. So
I think people are way underestimating the number of people, public service responders, that will be using a BYOD. I think government gets used to this idea that we give our first responders cell phones. Even in the FCC, we don't always do that. So I think, I've got 6 employees, 2 of them have cell phones, the rest use their own. I think we're underestimating the importance of that BYOD.
We're assuming there's gonna be many people on FirstNet that are BYOD.
Okay,
Our policy's coming out in 2018, but we assume that the majority of the volunteer agencies for sure, and then non-volunteer agencies, they either have stipends or they pay for their own cell phone.
Yeah.
And bring them in. So,
Yeah, so
the policy is assuming a big portion of.
Yeah, BYOD is included, and even so, if you're a volunteer firefighter, you will be a primary user, so even if you're BYOD, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I understand. I just think we're not getting enough clarity on that.
Okay,
That's
so
something I
that's
think you need to.
good.
Because I think it's probably, we're not talking 20% of the response, I think we're talking 70% of the response.
Yes.
And that's
the majority.
Because that's something that is gonna get deployed next year. Into the state plan, you can't really document what's going on. That's fine yet, so it's a little bit vague and there's not enough information yet. But it's coming, but we're certainly assuming that's a large part of the population that are gonna be in the adoption.
All right, so that's good, thanks, so we'll work on updating this element of it. Yeah.
In similar language along, it's not just phones, but it's tablets, because a lot of.
LTE-enabled devices.
Okay, great.
Smartphones.
Yeah, when we say phones, yeah, I mean, device, it's habit, but yeah, basically, you will be able to utilize any type of device.
With our telemedicine program and our grants, talking to CMS, CMS systems that we're talking about them having tablets so that they can send video streams back to the ER.
There's actually.
Any device AT&T sells, you're gonna be able to use. And they put band 14 in every RFP that's going out to device vendors now for new devices. You should see band 14 enabled devices, grow very quickly. But any device they sell, because they get priority and preemption on all LTE bands, can be a FirstNet.
And the thing, Ty, that we so in most of these vehicles where I talk about the trunk mounted modems, almost all of them, I don't think one is not, is also Wi-Fi. So basically you have the cellular connection, you have a Wi-Fi. So it's just in the medical world. That's what we're seeing, that's what I'm most excited about this is the medical world, because a lot of these things are doing in terms of remote heart monitors and that kind of stuff. It doesn't need even be band class 14. If you have that trunk mounted modem, which almost every vehicle does, the paramedics can basically use Wi-Fi to get that, that real time EKG and that kind of stuff back. So yeah, that's.
And right now in my remote and on mountain, those guys don't have the technology to do that. And so our program can fund them by their technology. And so I just want to make sure that it's all.
Good, because that's what most of them say. They're like, this is all great, and I can't even afford any of it. So if you apply for it, that's great.
There's also, if anyone wants to come see me afterward, I'll get it for you. There's a link that's provided in the formal portal that you can access to see it. Basically, for any device you have today, you can enter in information about that device, and it'll tell you, yeah, you can leverage this to bring FirstNet or AT&T, or no, you can't. So it tells you exactly for all your devices. Can I bring this over? Do I have to do one? It'll tell you. So it's a very quick and easy way for people to say, I don't want to replace this device yet, we have it already. Can I just leverage this? And we've got that information as well, that you can double check it and see what you can.
So in terms, to close up the cost conversation, what we're working on, Randy and Emil are working on think of it as a calculator that you'll be able to use, and especially if you sit down with AT&T and talk to them at an agency level. Basically, think of it as a financial model, a spreadsheet thing that basically you can go in and you'll be able to put, hey, I got 20 vehicles with modems, I got 50 phones, I got all these tablets, and you can type it in, and based on the pricing, and we'll update it based on we talked about these slides, it will give you an idea of okay, this is what the upfront cost to transition over to AT&T is going to be based on the devices and the cost to swap out any device that you might have to. Basically, if most of you have bought your trunk mounted modems recently, most of them are band class 14 enabled. If you've not purchased trunk mounted modems in the last few years, odds are you're probably going to have to replace those modems. So there's a variety of costs. You can put in the number, and it basically extrapolates you out to say, okay, this is what your costs look like based on this. So we're kind of putting the final touches on that, and updating that, and we'll be sending that out to everyone so we can kind of get it production ready. We just want to let you know that's one of the things we're working on, again, to help you guys make local decisions about this.
Don't be afraid to call your AT&T or FirstNet rep and say, is this true? And validate the numbers. Like everything changes and everything's negotiable, and you're trying to do business. Don't let me think about the phone.
And I would certainly expect me to look at that calculator and share it includes things like, can I bring my existing device over? Can I leverage that device? There should be something built into that calculator saying, hey, I have to repair it, to replace it. I have it. Make sure that calculator includes SIM and UICC swap, which is discussed as maybe you don't have to replace the device with SIM card So you're looking to the calculator, and I'd also encourage, FirstNet Colorado to include more than just FirstNet making in that calculator. Any device swap, any carrier that
Yeah, it basically says the cost. Yeah, it's focused more on devices and there's a monthly cost and hard cost
And
as
they'll
well.
compare it to a uniform, right? Compare it to reality across the board. Make sure we're doing that.
So some of the operational aspects, we talked about the primary over 600 users. So when you're looking at that, you kind of need to break that down and look at that both from an uplift perspective, what that means to you, and potential cost. So if you do want to say everyone in my jurisdiction needs the prioritization preemption, there's going to be an additional cost. You got to factor that in. So in terms of the operation, some of the specific relationships, in an opt-in scenario, it's kind of kooky. In that there's multiple relationships. So there's obviously the relationship as you as an agency and AT&T as the provider. That is really not going to look any different than it does right now. If you're an AT&T customer right now, your relationship really is going to be no different. If you're with, T-Mobile or Sprint or Verizon and you switch over, your relationship is going to be no different than it is with your current carrier. Now that said, there's also a relationship between AT&T and FirstNet. So the national contract is between AT&T and FirstNet. So that contract basically says FirstNet has contracted with AT&T to do this. We as a state and you as a local jurisdiction, we don't have access to that contract. We don't know what's in it. We don't, the parameters of that contract, we don't know that. So, then there's also the state AT&T FirstNet relationship that, our program office as a state trying to kind of, again, unify our voice, we have a relationship both with AT&T and FirstNet. So the relationship-wise here, it gets kind of, odd because you will be able to, we talked about SLAs. I'll let people ask, so what's the SLA going to be? Well, the SLA is going to be at a jurisdiction level. So you will negotiate your own SLA basically with AT&T on this parameter. There are performance standards in the national contract, but we don't know what those are. There's adoption goals they have to meet. There's performance metrics they have to meet. There's all these things that AT&T must meet, but we don't know what they are. If we ever get into an argument, if Paula comes to me and says, hey, we switch over to FirstNet, they are not doing what we asked them to do, they're not living up, I have no ability to do anything. Basically, we have to go to FirstNet and then say, okay, FirstNet, AT&T is not living up to their end of the deal, you go yell at it. You go deal with that. So that's, when we look at this, there's multiple relationships here. So it's not quite the cleanest structure, but it is what it is. So.
And Brian, I would actually clarify that a little bit. In an opt-in scenario, recognize that while those are contractual relationships, those first two bullets, that's correct. The agency has a contractual relationship in terms of SLA with AT&T, and AT&T has a contractual relationship with FirstNet. That's not a valid set of bullets when it comes to relationships. FirstNet will have relationships with agencies that adopt. Through consultation, through outreach, through all those things. FirstNet is more than happy to work with the governance structures established by the state, and continue to work with the state, and continue to advocate for public safety. But FirstNet will have that advocational speaking role as well with individual agencies. So the point is, Paula has a need, and she raises that FirstNet, hey guys, AT&T's not doing what they said they were going to do. That relationship exists. So it isn't necessarily exclusively that your only voice comes through the state. I love the idea of the state being able to amalgamate those voices and continue to make them strong, but it's not exclusive. Please understand, all these pieces are going to work together to make it the best possible network for the state. But I don't want to mix up this idea that contract and personal consultation relationships are all the same, right? There's different ways to do it. So going forward, we want to make sure we work with that governance structure that you guys want to work with, even on the individual agency level, and how you want that to go.
So for a local agency, that can be kind of confusing.
It can be.
Yeah,
right?
You have the state, FirstNet, AT&T, and FirstNet to go to when you have an issue. And we have this experience now when we've got, like a contractor selling another product. We've experienced that.
Yeah.
We don't really like it.
Yeah, that's like I said, we're
So it's difficult to create that. It's just not, who do you go to for what, or depending on the problem, and But I understand why it is like that. It's just that it's not an easy thing all the time. It's confusing for all. It's just, who do I call for what?
Yeah, and then, agency data box is gonna have their one agency, one contact. And our FirstNet regional work very closely with them. They partner in outreach, they partner in communications. To the extent possible, how do you get one throat to choke, and then how does that expand out from there? We're really sensitive to that as well. And we get that. That's part of the relationship, and that's why it's important enough to put in the slide right here. Those relationships have to be well understood, and they've got to be open, they've got to be transparent. They've got to be breathed and maintained to be functional.
Because I think to Paul's point, some of the problems we get into now is you get a finger pointing, we definitely don't need that.
And maybe it would be good to have a flow chart or something on, if you as a local agency and here's how this works. And you have a bullet.
You can consider how you want it to work. It's okay to be unsure right now and work it out. It's okay to develop it and grow it. It's okay to say, I like this, and you just can say, I don't, and then figure it out. None of it is finalized, none of it's required. It's a matter of what works. What's the most effective?
And who do I call for what?
Yeah, and I think moving forward, again, in an opt-in situation, what I would advocate is that we do kind of formalize that a bit more, and so that, again, the state would be a user potentially, but the state would also, we work very hard to try to get everyone on the same page on this. And I think there's a lot of value to that. And so that, if we formalize that structure in an opt-in situation where everyone does understand what the specific requirements are and duties are and how we go, to your point, Paul, with your flow chart, I think that'd be fantastic, that situation.
We've had some really good meetings in some of the early opt-in states like Virginia and Michigan to talk about governance and, hey, how are we going to set up PPT and ICANN, all these things. And we see them starting to come together and say, hey, let's figure this out and let's get that governance model established, let's get the communication model established, and let's get the support model, working well.
So, I'm sorry, I don't want the room to lose sight of that just because the state opts in, it does not mandate any local municipality or agency to adopt services. It is still incumbent upon AT&T to be very strategic in the way that we partner with you and earn your business. And you will have governance aside a very strong, strategic, direct relationship with the AT&T, right? And all of that brings from a resource perspective. So please just let's be clear that we bring a tremendous amount of commitment, a tremendous amount of resource to this initiative. We are at day zero of a 25-year commitment, right? The component that's important to weigh here, and there's many important factors, but is that by the state opting in, what that enables is AT&T moving forward and taking on the financial risk and commitment to build out the network for first responders that first responders deserve. And we are truly committed to that. An opt-out scenario, then the state takes on that burden, that financial risk, and the commitment to innovate and maintain the network for the next 25 years and beyond.
So other considerations, kind of cruise this one, we talk about application and deployable assets. LMR interface, that's something, we don't have a lot of information. I think it's still not quite defined yet, but obviously one of the key elements of this LTE technology is you can interface it with your LMR system. And so that's, I think, as we move forward, that's one of the areas, think through that. And, again, an opt-in situation, we need to work with AT&T to say, how does that work? How's it going to work between, if Harris versus Motorola shop, that kind of thing. I think this, again, is something that we would look at as a state approach, just because we worked hard to develop an ISSI approach as a state to make sure everyone, whether you're Harris or DDRS or local, can get to that. So that's actually something that we'll have.
Brian, can I ask for a clarification on that? Because I'm a little confused on whether that refers to all land mobile radios or just digital land mobile radios, digital trunk.
That's excellent, and I don't think we know enough, but I'm gonna probably just trunks.
Okay, so we've got, basically the whole wilderness community uses VHF radios. Yeah. That's all it is. So I want to make clear, let's find out and make clear that when people say you can integrate with LMR, that's not going to include that VHF.
Yeah. No, and again, like I said, this is one of the areas that's still not quite clear, just because So we need to look at moving forward.
What AT&T has said is more support ISP side.
Yep.
More support CSP side, and more support radio over IP configurations, but that doesn't necessarily mean all of them. Yeah. So I think the big thing is to figure out which radio system you have and what capabilities it has to integrate, and then work towards the solution. So they have a very much a playbook approach to say, let's figure out where you're at. Do you want your state network and then local networks to handle those differently, and then let's find the solution.
Yeah, and actually I have two questions. How's FirstNet, how does FirstNet envision, dynamic talk group management and subscribers coming on to talk group? You know, it's great that we have this large incident. Mesa County invites folks from the mountains to come in. How do we get access to their FirstNet talk group?
So that is a great question, Nate. And this stick is firing up a working group on it as we speak, and FirstNet's going to be involved in that discussion. As we move towards a mission-critical push-to-talk where we have an integrated solution, we'll begin developing that and participating in that conversation. But you integrating your LMR systems today into these solutions, you still have control over those software, right? So there's a lot of work to be done there outside of the technology and with respect to interoperability at the level where people have to talk to each other, as well as within the network. That's not a great question.
And the second, and as a follow-on to that, Andy Houston was doing a lot of work on integrating simplex communication, radio to radio, or terminal to terminal communication. Has Andy been making good progress with the international standard body, with 3GPP on getting simplex as well? Because that's a good, that overcomes some of the coverage gap.
Yeah, he's making progress. I don't know if Andy would go, yeah, I'm making great progress. Yeah, I'm making progress. But yeah, and we're tied into them. FirstNet, we've got a very good relationship with PSCR. We're working with them. We want to make sure that we may not ever be perfect, right? Nobody is. Yeah. But we want to be the best of what we're doing. And we want people in the industry to say, well, we're going to do our best to keep up with them because they're finally pushing back.
Yeah, again, this is probably one of the least clear areas.
Yeah.
But I just want to bring it up as it's a consideration. When we're looking at this opt-in versus opt-out, it's a consideration.
We're never going to claim that we're going to fix telephone.
Yep.
It won't happen, right? But we're going to make it as good as we can while we transition.
A couple quick things. I'm just going to talk to this real quick. So a couple of documents we were looking at, we put together a kind of a requirements checklist that we interviewed a whole bunch of people throughout the state and said, what is critical? What are the key elements? When you're looking at, okay, should we opt in or opt out or adopting this network? What are the key elements? We interviewed CIOs, police chiefs. We focused more on the technology side, communications folks, and put together a document that says, here's what everyone talked about. Like obviously security was a big one. So, okay, we gotta have security. So we're putting together look at that and say, okay, here's the key elements based on the state plan. Here's how it addresses it. Yes, it addresses it well, or no, it doesn't address it well. We're also looking at kind of like an adoption toolkit that will help you, again, an agency look at what is critical to you, and here's the elements of the state plan. Again, hopefully you have access to the private portal so you can kind of go through it. So it's kind of like a tutorial, so to speak, and a guide to walk you through and help you basically say, okay, yeah, you know what, this is something I think, if we opt in, I think I'm going to adopt this because that's what we want to know. If we opt in and we get a bunch of jurisdictions saying, yeah, we opt in, we'll use it. That's different from the state saying opt in, but the local jurisdictions saying, no, I don't think we can use it. So we want to try to make the best solution. So these two things will be coming again with finishing touches. So the other half of the conversation, alternative plan opt out. The update on that, we did receive our final bids for RFP. So it's a review. We released an RFP in March. Pre-qualified 2 vendors, and then asked for final bid. Hardcore. Let's see your network. Let's see the pricing. We received those September 14th. So we have a review committee. Again, it's kind of a subsection of our subgroup of our governance body, and then a few of the technical experts looking at this. We're meeting next Thursday to kind of go over these 2 bids. We have 2 bids. We do have numbers. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the numbers because it's an open procurement. But we have numbers. We have technical diagrams. We have coverage maps. We've got all the stuff you would expect, and we're doing that. The goal is to basically, next Thursday say, okay, this is our winner. or we also have the chance to say, you know what, either one of these guys really satisfy what we need, and potentially what we call competitive negotiation. So if we go through these two bids, we say, you know what, neither one of these really meet our needs, we can then begin what we call competitive negotiations, where we sit down with each bidder and say, okay, let's talk through your bid a little bit more. Let's, this is where we don't like your, that kind of thing, and really look to see what could we get to something that's viable for the state. So we're working through that next week. So again, unfortunately, you guys being the first, we don't have as much information on that. I can say I was pleasantly surprised by the final bids. I was honestly a little concerned based on the first cut, but again, we didn't, we told them we just want basic information. But I was pleasantly surprised by the two bids. Very strong technically, both of them, and the cost. There's some interesting proposals there with the cost. We'll kind of get into some of that here in a minute. As I mentioned, we also got our funding level. So this has been kind of the big critical thing. The law says we're entitled to a portion. Well, what the heck does a portion mean? So we found that out. So basically, if we opt out, we are eligible from anywhere from basically $71 to $88 million. And that range is because it's dependent upon what other states do. If every state opts out, we would only get to $71 million. If we're the only state that opts out, we'll get to $88 million. So that it kind of, what they've said is kind of, we'll work on this. How that was calculated, basically, it was calculated based on an NTIA study that they said, let's look at how many cell towers would it take to cover the entire country. And it was like 39,600 or something like that. They then said, okay, how many towers in each state would it take? And we'll get that proportion. So basically, that number that you see, that 88 million, is based on, I think they allocated us 670 cell sites to cover our entire state. Now, you're going to say that doesn't even come close. And what we just realized yesterday, I was talking back and forth with some of my colleagues in Western states, is that they didn't really factor in federal land in that coverage. So essentially what they said is they kind of said, we're not even going to worry about covering federal land. So with that 670 cell sites, which I think any carrier would say, you can't cover the state with 670 cell sites, it doesn't factor in federal land. So basically, those of us in the West kind of got penalized for having federal land in that allocation. So when you look at it, Alabama got like $20 million more than we did, and they're half the size of us, but they have no federal land in Alabama. So a little bit disappointing in that model, but that's really what it was. But again, even the 71 to 88, I was actually okay with that number. I think getting that number, it makes it potentially possible based on the modeling that the vendors do to be able to seriously look at opt out. And so one of the things we're going to be coming to you with once we kind of get through this process is what are the key issues? What are the issues for use local jurisdiction? I think that's my next. Okay. What we want to do is but basically, one of the things, everyone said, oh, it's going to cost $6 million. To be clear, our RFP basically stated there should be no upfront cost to the states. So in either scenario, if we say one of these scenarios looks like a viable alternative opt out, if we opt out, there will be no upfront capital cost from the state. The state is not going to write a check. It's very clear. We don't have the resources to write a check. We're not going to come to you as counties to write and say you need to write a check to do this. Basically, the model, and it's something that we're seeing throughout the telecom industry in general, is kind of a new way to say, you know what, if you have a certain amount of money up front, which the 71 million does, you can basically amortize the cost to build out the network based on the user fees. So essentially, you're capitalizing the future user fees. You're taking a time value of money to do that. So if we were to opt out, there will be no upfront cost to any agency. Now, will there be obviously cost to use the network? Absolutely. Just as you would pay AT&T, this is not going to be like ETR. You're not going to be able to use it for free. In an opt-out scenario, you would still pay whatever a month per device, to use that network. So when we move forward, we need to look at that. That said, if we opt out and no local jurisdiction wants to use the network, that's not going to work. So if we choose to opt out, we need support from local jurisdictions. So that's what we want to talk to you guys about. What would this look like for you opting out? Now, so if we choose to opt out, and I emphasize if, just because a lot of people have basically said we've already made up our mind, and that we are going to opt out. And that is as far from the truth as possible. I truly believe this decision is one of the most important decisions we're going to make in public safety communications in the next 25 years. And I would feel like I'm failing my job if I didn't look through this entire thing, look down 25 years and say, what is best for us? You know, and it's not black and white. You know, it's not simply an opt-in, opt-out. It's not what happens tomorrow. It's just to look at this down the road. You know, this technology will eventually become the primary foundation of our communications infrastructure. Countries across the world are moving to this. They're saying, LTE, we're getting away from LMR. So eventually, we're going to be the only country in the world using LMR. What is that going to mean? That means the price of the equipment is going to go even higher than it already is. You know, hard to believe. You know, we have to look at this down the road, and we have to look at this from a holistic perspective. So that's why we're doing this. So, but if we were to opt out, basically, we would have to provide full notice by the 28th of December. Again, I don't think the governor's going to worry about this over Christmas, so we're probably looking at early to mid-December. Once we say we opt out, we have 180 days to basically complete our RFP, which we've already done. That's one of the reasons why I pushed to do the RFP early, was because I knew I didn't want to be rushed. So we've already done our RFP. So basically, we have 180 days to kind of come to a formal contractual agreement with the vendor, which I think is the time to do that. We then have 90 days to basically, another 60 days to present our formal plan. So after the 180 days, we finish our RFP, we get our contract. We then have 60 days to get our plan to the FCC. So basically, we need to have our plan to the FCC within 240 days of the day we submit, and we say we're going to opt out. Now, the FCC has said we have an aspirational 90-day review period. So aspirational is their way of saying we're going to try really hard, but we're not going to guarantee. But in their notices, they did say we realize this is very important, and we want to fast track this. So I have confidence that the FCC would expedite this. So we submit our plan to the FCC. They have 90 days to say yay or nay. There's some steps that we've worked with that, and they published that. And then basically, if that is approved, we then go to the NTIA. We're still waiting for the NTIA process. They got that process with the grant out, but they still have not. I think the change of administration, and you know, there's still not a formally approved head of the NTIA right now, which I think is slowing them down a little bit. So we would have to go through the NTIA process that looks at our business case, our financial case, our technical ability to maintain the network, and all through that. And then once we go through that, then we negotiate the SMLA with FirstNet. We are still waiting to get that SMLA to kind of see what the potential fees might be and what the structure of that is. FirstNet has not provided that to us yet, but we're hoping that will come very soon, so we can see that SMLA. Because again, we can't make an educated decision unless we know all the information. So what we're trying to do is just get all the information possible for us. So to kind of close it up, you know, with this, what does opting in mean? You know, really, if we opt in, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, AT&T, we're giving you this spectrum to integrate into your network, and we're going to let you build off your network and provide this service. There's potentially better coverage and performance, as we talked about. The EPC should smooth out some of the roaming issues with the carriers that we see in the rural areas. There's more partner, there's security, there's the security aspect of this secured core, and then security. So basically, what we're saying is, okay, you guys are gonna be kind of the groundbreakers for this. We still have individual agency agreements, as we talked about. There is kind of no statewide uniform collaborative effort. Each agency, you know, works there. And basically, the options are still going to be on commercial platforms. So what we're saying if we opt in is that, you know what, the best path forward is just to go let the commercial industry push and innovate and move forward. Verizon has come out and said they're going to basically create a above-packet core, east-wide packet core. They're going to offer prioritization, preemption. So what this is, for all intents and purposes, what this is doing is just kind of creating an arms race, so to speak, and saying, okay, our communications platform is going to be based on commercial carriers, whether it's Verizon or AT&T. I fully expect T-Mobile to jump into this. Once they build out their network, they just spent $6 billion on spectrum. So, you know, basically it's going to be a commercial-based option. We're not going to have uniformity across the state. Everyone's going to have their own commercial. I know Verizon is talking with FirstNet about how that would work in terms of core-to-core. You know, I have no idea what those conversations are. But that's really what we're doing. It's an opt-in scenario. We're saying the commercial market is going to be the foundation for this communication. As I mentioned, this will be you're going to see a trend where this communication will slowly take over the utilization of LMR. It's not going to be today or tomorrow, but it will. I promise you that. So that's kind of, for all intents and purposes, what we're saying. What is opting out? Oh, that's what I was looking at. So opting out basically means we as the state say, you know what, we're still going to rely on the private market, but we want to do more of a closed model or a structured model where we say, you know, we're going to design this and it's going to be used just for us, just for public safety. Now, would our partner obviously use some of that infrastructure and spectrum and sell that out to the commercial side? Absolutely. That's the only way this would work, is if they do the same thing, they monetize the spectrum. What we're saying is we want a little bit more control and structure in terms of us dictating what that looks like. There is no upfront cost to the state, as I mentioned. We've been very clear, we don't want to do that. And the only way to really do that in an opt-out scenario is utilize existing assets. We're not going to go out and build 1,000 new greenfield sites. We don't need to. There's towers, there's buildings and so forth. So we would build upon public assets. There'll still be commercial options for jurisdictions. Again, if we opt out, there's no mandate to use this. If we opt out and you don't like the opt-out network, you can still go to AT&T. You can still go to Verizon. You can still go to Viera. It doesn't matter. There is no mandate to do this. So one of the things we're looking at, and this is one of the things I've argued from the beginning, is can we, in an opt-out scenario, can we capitalize on the cumulative investment we have made as a state in broadband? We have put in probably $30 million in broadband infrastructure from state investment. It's been matched by either private investment or local investment. So we've got $60 million in fiber that we put in throughout the state. Can we capitalize on that investment? We have towers that we own as jurisdictions. Can we capitalize on that investment? Can we look to other things? Is there things we can do with smart transportation, with other aspects of connectivity, and look at this as a package? I don't know the answer to that question. That's what we're going through this process in terms of looking at the opt-out. That's really what we're doing, is we're kind of saying, okay, you know what, we're going to control this network in more of a closed fashion. Now, one of the things I've talked about in the past is we've been very used to communications that we control, we put our arms around. We all have our LMR systems, whether it's the state or the local, we put our arms around it. No one else is on it. We control it 100%. That model will not work anymore. All right. With this new technology, it's too expensive, it's too complicated. That model is not going to work. So the other side of that spectrum is this, what we're looking at here. We're essentially opting in by saying the commercial solution. We should let the commercial markets basically drive this and move that forward. What we're asking in the opt-out is there something in between? Is there basically some other solution where we still work with the private sector? I'm not going to go hire 300 people and build towers and lay fiber. Any opt-out would be with a partner. It would be with multiple partners. There's going to be someone that just focuses on the technology. There's going to be someone that focuses on the finance. There's going to be someone that focuses on the maintenance, of the network and the operations of the network. I'm not going to have a 30-person staff dedicated to monitoring the operations of the network. That would be outsourced, to this private entity. So basically, what we're looking at is there something in the middle between what we're used to, what this option is, and is there something in the middle? Is it better? I don't know. What we hope to do is provide everyone the information as possible. Let our governing body, who's really been committed to this for the last 4 years, and make the recommendation. What is the best solution? We're just a step. I'm one vote on the governing body. There's 15 people on the governing body. So, I have 1/15 to say. Paula and Carl are on there. So that's kind of really what we're looking at. I think that's it. So that's kind of it. That's it in terms of the full presentation. Questions? Again, the private portal has a lot more information. And, really to be able to analyze this thing, you really have to get into that private portal and look at this thing and kind of use this as a template. So I would really encourage you, if you have not already got access to the private portal, get in there, look at it, use this as a guide, use some of these guides that we're going to have, the adoption, the checklist, the cost tool, use that and kind of make an analysis. And then again, as soon as we can get you information on what opting out looks like, we will get that into your hand as soon as possible. Because we do want your voice in that as well. So that's kind of it for the formal. Tracy, good. Yep.
Yeah, on the opt-out slide, that the first one, it wasn't really clear that it was building the radio access network and connecting to the nationwide FirstNet board because of this
it isn't just an ultimate.
No, well, yeah, we're building out the access network for Colorado and then connecting with the nationwide core.
Yeah.
So basically, but in terms of the management of the network, we would manage that network. We would determine the build out. We would look at, when we would look at these gaps, we would direct that, and then, that's where we look at the investment of the $70 million. That's where to say, okay, is that, what can we do with that kind of money in terms of looking at investment and where we see, and are there creative solutions? Are there creative options to utilize that, money to do something different? And again, I'm not saying different is better or worse. I'm just saying, is there a way to do something different? And then let's figure out what different might look like. So, yes.
Just one there. So if you opt out, you take this money and you build your towers network. You plan on the open access to AT&T or Verizon or any provider.
Well, again, in either scenario, there's not going to be very many new towers built. I wouldn't say there's plenty of macro towers, but we're pretty close. The industry's focusing really on 5G, which is much smaller cell towers. So the need to build new macro towers is very small. So either we opt in or we opt out. We're going to use existing towers. American Tower and Crown Castle own a majority of the towers in this country, along with SBA. So if we were to opt out, we would still need to go to those companies, or if we had a partner, if an existing cellular company was part of this opt out, and they had infrastructure. So we can't dictate if we use 300 of American Tower's towers, we can't say to them, you will make this open access. Their business model is open access. Now, when you're talking about the fiber.
Yeah, but you're not, so even though you're using public dollars, you cannot make that infrastructure open access.
We give it the existing infrastructure that we simply use. So someone's put up a tower and they're charging rent on that tower. We can't go in and say rent to us, and oh, by the way, you have to have this open access.
Right, but any new infrastructure.
Any new infrastructure, yes. So that when you look at new, like what would opting out look like for new infrastructure? Primarily, it's fiber. So that, again, the towers are there. The equipment is the equipment. There's two vendors. There's Nokia and Ericsson. AT&T uses Nokia and Ericsson. I'd be willing to bet you dinner that any vendor that proposes to us is going to use Nokia and Ericsson. Cisco switches, run most of the, so it's probably going to be a Cisco switch. So in terms of building new infrastructure, what we're really looking at is utilizing the fiber for the backhaul network. We're looking at things, the state, we're spending $50 million right now to upgrade our microwave system for the state. 300 towers throughout the state to be able to do that. We specifically, the vendor we chose has the ability to upgrade that network. So right now we've spec'd it out just for LMR. All we have to do is do a software upgrade on the radios, mostly. We have to replace a few radios, but mostly just a software upgrade, and that microwave network could then be used for this network and other purposes. So could we integrate that asset that the state has into this? So any asset though that the state puts in with public money, any kind of fiber or anything, we would make sure that it is open access, just like it was done with the DOLA grants. And any fiber put in with DOLA grants has to be open access.
And then on the FirstNet side, is that open access? Is that any infrastructure built with FirstNet? Is that open access? Or is that exclusive?
So it varies depending on who owns the towers that they're on. So AT&T, by and large, leases most of their towers. The nation, they lease most of their backhaul. That would be depending on who they give it back.
Go ahead, Marcus.
I was just curious, have you established a hard deadline to deliver your recommendation to the governor's office? I was curious if you weighed how much time you want to provide the governor's office to evaluate and weigh your recommendation.
Yeah, we're actually working with them right now to kind of talk through the time frame. We've identified a couple of dates that we want to talk to him with. We do not have a firm drop dead where he has said this is one of my recommendations. So, but we are in communication with the governor's office. Tony Neil Graves, who I work with on the broadband side, spent an hour with him last week talking through this issue. So he's very well briefed and understands it, and we're working with him right now to figure out what that date is.
Hey, Brian, can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Jen Price with AT&T. So I want to clarify a couple of things from the opt-in, opt-out slide, because I think it's important to understand, first of all, in an opt-in scenario, AT&T has committed not just to the federal funds that are available for building out the network, but our own $40 billion worth of funding to continue to build out the network. So in addition to having the AT&T footprint today, and I think as you alluded to a little bit, we'll be building out the LTE, we'll be working with our roaming partners to really smooth out how that operates, as well as adding additional sites to the network. And that's something that we have been working with the governance board on, and we're hoping to get some feedback on where those sites would go. Ultimately, as we said, our build priorities are the state's build priorities. And so that's you know, an additional $40 billion worth of AT&T funding that's going to go into building out the network. I would sort of challenge the notion that there doesn't need to be additional or significant additional site build. I mean, to sort of lay some groundwork for this, AT&T alone has put about $500 million more than that into our Colorado-based network in the last 3 years. And I know our conversation today started out chatting about AT&T's coverage. You know, we have a $1 billion head start. And that's the conversation that I think is really important, because we're saying we're going to take the network that's there today, and we're going to make substantial investment, and we're going to build that out. And frankly, that investment and where that goes is with the state of Colorado to tell us what's important, what's urgent, what needs to be built out, and how can we partner. And that really is the goal of the public-private partnership. So in an opt-out scenario, you get AT&T's initial network, you get the additional build-out that we would have in partnership, and then we're able to provide that network very quickly. And so, you know, in most cases, we're talking about being able to provide, in an opt-in scenario, the ability to use priority on the FirstNet network by the end of the month and preemption by the end of the year. Opt-out, I think there's a couple of things that are important to note. One is that, you know, conceptually, I know there's a big conversation going on about whether or not the state would need to expend funds in an opt-out scenario. And I think it's important to understand that if the state opts out, they pledge the full faith and credit of the state of Colorado to the federal government to build and maintain this network, including upgrades for 25 years. That includes everything from the cybersecurity centers that AT&T has that are dedicated to FirstNet, to customer service, sales obligations, all of those additional obligations that come with that. Now, there is an RFP, and you know, the state can say in an RFP, we want the state to expend no funds, but ultimately, that's aspirational. That is the state, because ultimately the contract is between the state of Colorado and the federal government. There is potential for expenditure. And additionally, I've already heard comments. I actually heard the lawyer for the governance board make the comment the other day that he's not sure how the state signs it, how the governor signs an opt-out, because he expects that to come with some necessary funding. Whether or not that's a staff and oversight, because we've had a lot of conversations about how staff would be involved in building out an opt-out scenario network and providing their feedback, that's going to require staff hours. And there are instances if the state opts out, just like if AT&T provided the network, in an opt-out scenario, the state has obligations to the federal government. And if those obligations aren't met, the state will be fined. Now, I'm sure that the RFP says that the provider, that their partner would need to pay those fines, but that's assuming that the partner is has the ability to pay those fines. And so ultimately, that's not something that can be guaranteed, that the state will not have to expend funds. And I think that that's something that's important to talk about.
Well, Jen, I appreciate your perspective, but I think there's the state puts its full faith and credit behind it, whatever it does. So I just like the county puts its full faith and credit behind whatever they do, just like a municipality puts its full faith and credit behind whatever it does. So I guess, you know, I would just say she's absolutely correct. If we choose to opt out, we're saying we're going to do this. And I would say we wouldn't do that lightly. In terms of the legal issues, that's a misrepresentation. Basically, the conversation, and we have had, so we've had the Attorney General's office looking at this from a legal perspective. How do we do this? How do we do that? So we have that covered in terms of what it would take, to actually have the governor formally, declare opt-out, that kind of thing. So a lot of that we've taken care of that. So I think, what we're committing to as a staff is to say we're going to bring forward 2 solutions, and we're going to be very clear about what the pros and cons of each solution are going to be. And when it comes down to it, yes, opting out basically means we are stepping up and we are taking on some responsibility. So the key question becomes, is that worth it to us as a state? Do we as a state, and I say state collectively, I said, big state, little state, do we as a state collectively want to take up that responsibility for the future of our communications? Or are we comfortable with the current plan? That's really all we're saying. So absolutely correct. If we do opt out, it's a lot of work. It's a heavy lift. I've said that from day one. This is a heavy lift. But what I've also said is, I guess, my dad didn't say, wasn't one to espouse advice on me a lot, but one thing he did say, he said, if something seems really, really hard to do, it's probably the right thing to do. And so that's, I kind of fully want to look at this, and we will, before we opt out, and basically come to you, you guys will have all the information we possibly can. You'll understand the costs. There will be elements of the contractual agreements we probably won't be able to get through because it takes, as I mentioned, the process. But we are not going to do anything foolish for the state. That's our commitment to you, because again, we want this to come from you. So that's really where we're at with that, Bob.
And my question is kind of related to that. What process will it be, or for the first part, for those of us who signed the agreement, we were able to put comments and things like that.
Yep.
What mechanism will you use for gathering that input for this opt-out discussion?
It's going to have to be less formal, as I mentioned. We're still trying to get through to see what the options look like. I mean, as I said, we may look at both of these bids and say neither one of these are very good. And at that case, it kind of makes our decision for us. So what we'll have to do is really condense this. Once we get the information we have, share it with you guys, share it with our governing body, and give you guys the best information we can, and then just ask for direct feedback from us. So basically, it would be information from us, and then just saying, all right, guys, this is tight, but we need to look at this. And again, if we say, okay, we're going to opt out, we've got 240 days to really get that plan finalized, put together, and presented, and work with our partner. That's the other thing. There's a lot of talk about, the risk. Well, in a P3 model, that's basically what you're doing as a state or as a governmental entity. In a P3 model, you're taking the risk and you're assigning it to somebody else for a cost. And so that's, basically when we look at that, any kind of partner in an opt-out situation, they would be responsible for all this stuff. So all those details, we probably wouldn't be able to get through until, that's what we use with 240 days. So it's not going to be crystal clear in an opt-out, but what we can commit to is you will understand what the concepts are, you'll understand what the potential financial implications are, and the operational implications. One of the things we talked about is governance. Let's say we got to figure out, if we opt out, we got to figure out governance. How to do this. We want to learn our lessons from DGR, and both good and bad, and move forward with this. We have some ideas about structuring that. We've been doing research, so there's still some things we have to look at, but it will be a condensed time frame, but it'll be much more of a direct one-on-one. All right, guys, here's the information. Let us know what you think. And again, our governing body, in an opt-out situation, I think we are kind of placing a little bit of faith in our governing body to say, you guys, you guys may have to make a difficult decision and make a difficult recommendation. And again, I would argue those folks have been dedicated to this for 4 years. They've been looking at this inside and out. They're very talented people, and they're very committed people to this. So, yeah. Bob?
Area, there's a large gap. But one thing to consider, figuring out which method or which way to support is, who do we think is going to build out the network the best possible manner for our area or state of Colorado or the Northwest region? Who can do it better, and what benefit is it going for us? And I think that's really, that's what it comes down to, or what's that like, well, what's going to be best for us locally? Who's going to do the best job and maybe the
Yeah, and I think to Jen's point, absolutely, the opt-in solution, much quicker to market, absolutely 100% true. It will take us time to build out the network. So if you look at it from, if you're looking at this and you say from an immediate perspective, we cannot compete with AT&T in terms of speed to market, absolutely. But again, the pragmatic part of me says, okay, let's look at it in 5 years, and 10 years, and 15 years, and 20 years. And so that's what I want to look at is, because, when we make this decision, it's 25 years. If we opt in and the first 2 years go great, and then all of a sudden by year 4 or 5, we're like, you know what, this is not what we had hoped. We're done. We're stuck in that commercial model. Until I don't foresee another round of spectrum like this coming out in a long time. And some people will argue, well, they say, oh, you can use the citizens band. The citizens band sucks in rural areas. Okay, so this availability spectrum is a very unique situation. And so whatever we decide, if we decide to opt in, and eventually down the road it doesn't turn out the way we hoped, there is no going back. There is no saying, okay, you know what, we should have built our own network, unless we want to go buy some spectrum for the government, billions of dollars. So again, that's why I've said we've got to think of this thing all the way through, and it's difficult. No one can predict 20 years down the road. To Emel's point, if we're still using LTE in 20 years, we got a problem. So just say
there's always much the process that your partner
yeah.
do the plan. Because
yes.
Nobody plans 20 years out.
Nope.
They don't.
Yeah.
The maps you saw today are just snapshots this year too. You really need to. You haven't seen right to the rural areas.
I'm gonna watch you later.
You get credentials and get a half day by phone and see those.
not everybody here has.
Yeah.
Right.
All they have to go on.
That's right. And that's not enough to really know what the future looks like. It's just more than.
Well, if there, all the questions, there are plans for how long it's going to take AT&T so that Western Slope has some service.
If you go to the private portal, there's a 5-year commitment. So basically what AT&T is committed to is, in their contract, they have 5, IOC. So they have IOC and then FOC. So there's 5 iterations. Basically think of it as starting 2018, going to 2022. So on a private portal, you can go in and you can see what the coverage looks like in year 1, what the coverage looks like in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And basically when you look at, so for this area, AT&T has said by FOC, by year 5, again, I can't show you the maps, but there is significantly more coverage in this area by year 5 than there is on year 1. So what they're saying is within 5 years, we will have this area built out.
In the AT&T commercial areas, you're only planning 18 to 20 months out. You don't see 5 years. So you see what they're going to do in the next 2 years. You see band 14 in 5 years. And as we go, those maps are going to be updated, and their plan includes national AT&T road.
Yeah, but again, that private portal has much more detail where you can drill in and see the specifics of what it looks like.
But it doesn't have all the drive data, all the.
No, that's just stuff what we put together. So.
You don't have that validation.
So Rio Blanco County put a lot of money into fiber and broadband into the county. The county government has. Will AT&T then go in and lease that fiber to their services, or are they going to build duplicate
Well,
fiber?
We're in discussions on all of those aspects. Right? So we have a willingness to speak with any local municipality, any county seat, as well as our roaming partners that we work with today on how best to facilitate that moving forward. But we are, the larger message is we're committed to building out all those areas. And
I think the biggest criticism we've had in the West, I think, what I've heard from is not this initiative, but other initiatives like the schools and those kind of things that have come down. And then the entities that got the funding built a fiber in the ground network right next to an existing fiber in the ground network. And it was money not well spent when they could have been.
Yeah, I think when you look at, so, the EagleNet, and I've fought this battle. I would encourage all of you guys, when you're thinking through this, to forget about EagleNet. It makes absolute. if AT&T wanted to connect some of their towers, it would make no business sense for them to lay fiber right along the route of somebody else. Now, if they have to lay the last mile to get to the tower, they probably do that, but it makes no business sense for AT&T to overbuild anybody. So if they're trying to get out in Rio Blanco County and there's fiber there, I would be willing to bet they are going to come to an agreement with whoever owns that fiber to utilize that fiber. So again, it's with an opt-in, it's a commercial model. It's a commercial model of let's build out to where the infrastructure is. If we have to put our own infrastructure to get there, we will. But we want to use CenturyLink. We'll use Level 3. We'll use Zayo. We'll partner with all these different companies to do this. Like I know, Zayo. That's one of Zayo's big markets right now is working with wireless companies to build fiber to their towers. So they will go and they will work with the main backhaul providers, and Zayo will build the 2 miles of this tower or the 3 miles of this tower, so that the cell companies can get fiber to that tower. That's what they do. So it's not necessarily AT&T building that fiber, but it's Zayo, because Zayo then goes around and sells that fiber to somebody else, that kind of thing. So in an opt-in model, it's basically, while there's the additional money, AT&T is still in business to make money, which is not a bad thing. So it will be a very business-centric model. Now, in an opt-out, again, forget about EagleNet. If we were to opt out, it is impossible for us to do this economically and go overbuild fiber to someone that already has fiber in the ground. So in an opt-out scenario, I will emphasize, the only way to make it work is to use existing assets at a very efficient rate. And existing assets means fiber, it means towers, it means rights of way, it means microwaves, it means a lot of things. So, yep. All right, so, do you have a question? Oh, I think, yeah, sure.
Okay. In the opt-out, you have that communities can still choose a commercial option. So I guess my question is, as you're looking at a state opt-out, how does that compromise the entire state plan if you get 20 counties that choose to pursue? Is that license still available even if the state opts out, or they need to make it commercial?
No, they're just going so that the spectrum is either, so FirstNet has exclusive rights to the spectrum. They have subleased it for any opt-in state. They are basically subleasing that spectrum to AT&T for 25 years. In an opt-out situation, they are subleasing that spectrum to the state for 25 years. It's only the state. So because somebody will ask me, they said, well, what if the state opts in, but our counties want to opt out? Can we get the spectrum for our 10 counties? No, it's a state decision. That's how we've done this. So if the state opts out and Pitkin County says, you know what, we don't like what the state's built, you can still go to AT&T or Verizon or Union or whomever is offering commercial service and say, we want to use your service. No. Yeah, it's whatever they're offering and even an opt-in. So if we opt in, AT&T is building out, and you in Pitkin County say, you know what, we still don't like AT&T. You can still go use Verizon or Union or Viero or whomever, but yeah, the additional spectrum that they have, AT&T has, is not available to those providers.
One of the questions came up from the Club 20 executive group was talking about the fact that states bordering Colorado has opted in, Wyoming, New Mexico, and one of the concerns about the compatibility if they opt out. If Colorado was opt out, and you were bringing resources into those states to help in the West, like wildfires and stuff. Would there be an issue with compatibility? Would they be able to communicate?
Again, I'll go back to there are 2 manufacturers of radio access equipment for the most part. AT&T uses Nokia and Ericsson. I would be shocked if any partner that came to us for an opt-out did not use Nokia and Ericsson. So
the model is the state builds the radio access network, and it still connects to the national. So it's still FirstNet, AT&T makes more for now.
Yeah, the only issue, the primary issue of that was if AT&T is using Nokia and Ericsson, and if we went and used, Acme, B company, and Acme, B company really didn't have, their stuff together, then there could be some issues in terms of handoff and so forth with that.
Well, you should think about if your state grandfather state an opt-out scenario only uses Band 14, AT&T may not build out Band 14 in the entire state that's adjacent to you.
Yes.
But Band 14 won't be common for every public safety information that's under the surface, but you can't predict those,
Yeah, but from a band class 14 perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, the interoperability is really not that big of a deal. Yep. Yep. Additional questions? All right, so we're on the clock. Please use this. As I said, we'll email this out to everyone. If you don't have access, get access to that private portal. Let us know. Talk to the governing body. On the website is a list of all the governing body members and representatives. So if you're fire, or if you're sheriff, or, you know, as I mentioned, Paul is the rural representative from Western Slope. You know, talk to them, get them your input. You know, there's webinars. We're going to go through this again, but get us your input and ask questions. You know, and it's okay if you say, I really don't like any of these options. That's okay too. You know, we want to know what you think. So with that, thank you guys for your time. Appreciate everyone being here. Again, sorry for being tardy. And look forward to talking to you guys soon.
All right.